This is the Kia Seltos, and it's probably the most important car Kia has made to date. Why? Because people buy crossovers just about everywhere, and this is also a global model. So it's not just sold in Southeast Asia, it's also sold in Europe, the US, South America, and just about everywhere where Kias are sold. So, this global baby, how is it on the road? Well, let's find out together, shall we? But first, the styling, and I have to say Kia did a fine job with the Seltos. Why? Well, just look at it. It actually looks pretty handsome for, well, a crossover. Actually, not just a crossover, it's a handsome looking little runabout. So, you have this T-shaped headlight that extends all the way to the fender, and you have this big, bold, brash grille. Of course, there's the signature Kia tiger nose grille right here. And they incorporated their design languages in a way that all their cars don't look alike. They actually gave them personality, injected personality in each and one of them. So you can't say that all Kias look alike, and I admire that in a brand. I actually like this neat little detail. So if you see this strip, it's actually textured. So when you touch it, you do feel something, and that is attention to detail you also have to admire from them. Again, the front end styling, really like it. Well, the sides, well, of course, just about every car these days has a floating roof design in some way, shape, or form, and the Seltos is no exception. They blacked out the front pillars as well as part of the rear pillars. It does give that a bit of personality, again, which is something you wouldn't say about Kias 20 years ago. Also, typical in crossovers, you have black cladding all over the lower half of the car, and at the back, it sort of reminds me of the old Kia Forte 5 hatchback. I don't know if you guys remember that, but again, it's all in all a handsome looking car. I wouldn't say that there's a totally bad angle, and what Kia has done, because they want to appeal to the global market, is designed a radical looking car in some ways, but also a car that will appeal to a lot of people. So if it's the global market they're trying to capture, on styling alone, Kia has actually done it right. Now let's go step inside and see what that's like. Now, inside the Seltos, or first impressions, I would say the dash design looks pretty good. Very logical, ergonomics, bang on. Your hands go where dials and the buttons usually go. So, again, ergonomically, Seltos is pretty great. Also, just looking at it, you know, they actually styled the dashboard. They didn't just haphazardly slap on aircon vents and dials and knobs and all that. So, this cabin is well thought out. I have to tell you guys that this is the LX model. So this means this is at the bottom of the range, but that's not a totally bad thing because you actually get a lot of stuff for your money. It has a touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. For a base SUV, or crossover rather, that's actually hugely impressive. Sure, there's hard plastic on the top of the doors and on the dashboard, but that's not a totally bad thing. Again, this is an entry-level model and this is a subcompact crossover. If you find stuff like that in a Sorento, you'd be disappointed, but this is the smallest crossover Kia offers. So don't expect a lot of luxuries in the way, but what they do have is a lot of convenience features, such as one USB port, two charging ports, and this double layer cubby holder. That's what I like about it. They try to expand the utility of this car inside. You've got huge door pockets, good enough to fit a 1-liter bottle. And I have to say, general feel of the cabin, when you start poking and prodding things as such, well, it feels well screwed together. So you don't feel shortchanged in this entry-level model. All models, by the way, come with automatic headlights too. Again, very, very noteworthy feature in a base model. Now, from the driver's point of view, the Kia Seltos actually feels pretty good. The seats in particular, the seat bottoms, feel pretty good. Now, they're not going to be body-hugging seats like you find in a sports car because it's not a sports car in the first place. But I do have to say that this polyurethane wheel actually feels good to touch. It doesn't feel squeaky or squidgy like in other cars. Then you also get buttons on the steering wheel. Now, when you hear base model, these are usually blank, but they actually loaded it up. There's Bluetooth, you can answer your phone from the steering wheel, and you can even adjust the settings through the steering wheel, and it will be displayed on the aforementioned multi-information display. And as I mentioned, Kia made a valiant effort to make the dash and the interior itself look more interesting. And even the key, I have to say, is worth a mention. Now, what are the back seats like? Come, join me. Now, before I start with what it's like here in the back seat, I have to commend Kia for making the door openings of the Seltos wide. That makes access in and out of here much easier. Now, here in the back seat, space is pretty abundant, although I am not the tallest of passengers or people to judge actually full interior volume. Although I do have to say that there's enough footroom underneath here so I can actually stretch out. Headroom, also in abundance, probably could easily fit someone close to 6 feet. But other than that, there's actually not much to say in the interior. I do wish Kia would add a couple of things like, well, a little storage pocket here at the back of the front seats, air conditioning vents, or even a 12-volt socket even. And this one doesn't even come with rear armrests. So, well, this is literally just a place to sit in and not much else. At least there's a lot of space so you can actually be comfortable in it. Now that's the back seats done, and now for the most important part of any crossover or anything with a hatch, the cargo area. Now for the cargo area, the Seltos has a flat, wide, and almost rectangular cargo area. That means you can actually load a lot of stuff in here, whether lengthwise or wider items. Now yes, the wheel arches kind of protrude, but in a way that they don't totally eat up space. So the Seltos has a lot of usable space here in the cargo area. And if that's not enough, the rear seats, just pull a tab, push them forward, and it forms a totally flat loading bay. So if you're carrying plywood for some reason, the Seltos can totally do it. And here's another thing. These side pockets are actually pretty convenient for hiding stuff, and they even put small hooks on each corner so tiny groceries don't fly around. And here's something I like about the Seltos. Underneath here is a full-size spare tire, which is something you don't really see much of these days. So in case you get a flat, at least you're not running on those skinny donuts. If there's one thing I like about Kias, it's that they get the ride and damping spot on. Now, I've tested a Soluto before, and I've tested a Rio, a Picanto, and all that. And for what they are, they ride very comfortably. And this Seltos is no exception. As its daily runabout, it's very comfortable. And what I like are the seat bottoms, which are very, very comfortable as well. At first, I actually thought that the ride was firmer and not something I would expect from a Kia, but as it turned out, the tires are just overinflated. So when we brought it back to factory spec, I finally experienced that ride that I was expecting in the first place. So on the comfort front, the Seltos is fantastic. There's no doubts about that. The Kia Seltos is powered by a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, which in itself sounds pretty conventional. But the thing is, it has something rather special. It has what's called an Atkinson cycle. Now, what exactly is the Atkinson cycle? Well, rather than try to explain it to you tediously, what an Atkinson cycle engine is, I'll just tell you what it does. It helps save a lot of fuel, and I've seen it for myself. it actually does work. I've faced some pretty heavy traffic for the past couple of days, averaging about 15 to 16 kilometers per hour. And yet the car still returned 8.5 to 9 kilometers per liter. Now that's something you'd expect from a 1.6 liter or even a turbo diesel in heavy traffic, but not from a 2-liter gas engine. So that in itself is hugely impressive. I mean, normally you'd expect a 2-liter to drink fuel, but that's just not the case here in the Seltos at all. Now that 8.5 to 9 kilometer per liter figure is done without the assistance of Eco Mode. There are actually 3 driving modes available in the Seltos to choose from. There's Eco, Normal, which I'm on now, and Sport. And honestly, just leave it in normal, treat it like a daily driver and all that, and the Seltos will, happily bring you places, bring you to work and all that without much fuss. Now, that 2-liter engine, as I mentioned, with the Atkinson cycle, delivers fantastic fuel economy. Now, on the performance side, however, it feels more like I'm driving a 1.6 liter because I'm not saying this car is slow, it just takes a bit of time to respond. Well, I'm in normal mode right now, so I'm not expecting fantastic throttle response, but the engine takes a while to wake up. So even if you dig your foot in about halfway through the pedal, it still refuses to rev a little bit, and then little by little, the engine becomes awake. Now, because of that, you have this impression that you're going very slowly, but when you look at the speedometer, you're actually picking up pace, well, at a decent rate. However, that throttle response really needs a bit of work, mainly because if you want to overtake someone, again, the engine, well, the throttle response takes its time before it actually gets moving.
On the performance side, the Seltos won't light up your world or set any speed records.
But as an engine, yeah, great economy. Performance, well, it just doesn't feel like a 2-liter in here. But again, thanks to the Atkinson cycle, at least it doesn't drink like a 2-liter. Now on to the subject of handling. Now I'll be very straightforward with this. The Seltos really isn't going to light the enthusiast in you. Again, this is a subcompact crossover, so I don't think they had handling dynamics in mind. That said, I'm not saying it's a bad handling car. It's actually the opposite of that. It's safe, secure, planted. Although sometimes I have to guess where the front wheels are pointed because again, there's not much feedback through the wheel. However, because it feels safe and planted and secure, you're really not gonna be scared of taking corners in this car. It doesn't feel like it's gonna tip over at any moment. And probably mainly because it's relatively low to the ground, but at the same time, SUVs these days, well, crossovers these days, handle pretty well. It's just that it doesn't really offer much feel or feedback and any of that. Again, it's not gonna be an enthusiast's car. This is a family car after all, so if you're expecting any sportiness from the Seltos, you're looking at the wrong end of the market. If I have another gripe, that would be the brakes. I'm not saying they're weak, but they have this sort of strange spongy feel that when you initially step on them, it feels like you just hit a hard brick and then eventually starts getting softer and all that. So in stop and go traffic, it makes it a little bit difficult to judge. So if it's your first time trying out the Seltos, you might find yourself head banging against the steering wheel because it does have a tendency to be grabby, but once your foot's adapted to it, well, it kind of starts getting normal. But again, if you're driving it for the first time, yes, those brakes can be very grabby.
Yes, there are a couple of things I would like to add in this entry-level Seltos, such as stability control, more storage pockets at the back, and probably a USB port or a charging socket at the back as well. But all in all of the good stuff's in front. So you have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, you have connectivity, which is a must in every car these days. And despite being an entry-level model, it actually looks much like the higher spec models. The only differences you have are the lights and the fog lights, really. So you're not really missing out on much.
So you're actually getting a good deal when you're getting the entry-level Seltos. So for a little under 1.1 million pesos, you get a fuel-efficient engine, you get bang up-to-date infotainment system, lots of space inside, practical cargo area, and this probably is the most affordable 2-liter you can buy in the market today. And if that's not enough to convince you, well, we don't know what will. So yes, Kia did their homework with the Seltos, and I have to say it passes with flying colors too.